This week on your Old School RuneScape Update, Summer Summit 2024 brings news on Project Zanaris and community servers. We discuss why they're on the way and what the game may be losing. Also, Varla-MORE brings 2 new expansions, plus Wrathmaw, Leaks 5, and an update on HD mode and plugins. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, episode 44, recorded Sunday, September 8th, 2024. To the moon. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Old School RuneScape Update. Sirion and myself are here. We decided to push the show a day because of something called the Summer Summit, which I figured the folks out there probably wanted to hear about sooner rather than later.
Yeah, for sure.
And isn't it interesting what we have in the Summer Summit? I think it was interesting to watch. I watched most of the video production after the fact. I assume you took parts of it in one way or another.
Yeah, I'm more of a reading person, so I did do the reading. I watched most of the YouTube videos. I think the only one I missed was I don't even know which one it was. One of the longer ones. But yeah, no, I took most of it in. I think it's good. There's always a lot of information to ingest, but
you bet. And we're gonna go through that, of course. And you know, for keen folks who haven't looked at the show notes yet, you might be wondering what order we're gonna go in. Well, we're gonna start with probably a thing that was the most surprising to us and his ruffling feathers in the community. But if you want a bit of a peek into which way that's gonna go, check out the full show notes over at update.show. And in the meantime as well, we do have a friends chat in game that you can find at BitsBytes and the community Discord over at update.show/Discord. And of course, what we're talking about here is Project Zanaris. Community servers for old school RuneScape. Oh boy.
Yeah,
it
really caught me by surprise.
Okay.
Because there's this thing where it was received positively. I'm like, who is asking for this? That's the thing I'm curious in. It's actually asking for this.
It's a content creator update.
You think so?
I think so. I think that's the whole business behind it. I think it's a content creator update.
Could be. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so I'll explain that. Then I'll go into one thing you were mentioning on this and where that likely goes. And the reason I think it's a content creator update is because having witnessed both worlds of RS3 and old school, the content creation forces in both games is incredibly different. The old school one is very diverse with lots of what I'll say are unique series that feature self-imposed gameplay style restrictions. And I think what Jagex is going for with this is that if they can offer Project Zanaris that allows somebody, a content creator, or even just somebody with a community following behind them, to create a specific game mode, like, for example, a one-tile mode or a one-hit-point mode, then from that, they can share that experience with their viewers and amplify that, and just amplify what is a very quintessential old-school RuneScape experience on that. And because of that, I feel like it's more content creator focused rather than for the wider community. Hence why people are saying, why did we ask for this? Well, it's content creator focused.
Like my thinking on this would be that hey, if you want that functionality, like for example Nightmare mode by the series by Settled right now, that's just a plugin. You can enable in RuneLite and everybody can do that. So it to me doesn't feel like something that needs these servers. Like things like tower locking, all of that, you can just do these restrictions on the client side, because you have to choose, like you have to opt into these restrictions. So it's not that the server needs to enforce these really. Like only if you start doing this and then want to have high scores attached to it,
Yeah.
then it might, become relevant. But even like to that, like we already have the plugin ecosystem, which does a lot. And so, why would you choose to play on a different thing instead? And like maybe there will be content creator communities that are really interested in this. Like playing sort of as part of a community. It doesn't even have to be content creator, right? Like a clan could decide
Yeah, absolutely.
to own their own server. And now it's almost Minecraft.
Right.
But is that desirable, and how long is that going to be interesting for?
And how long is that sustainable for? And what does that do for community bifurcation? Because if I come up with a mode that effectively trivializes, combat and movement in combat so that, whenever I click somewhere, I immediately would move there if that was something that could be done with it, and I'm going to amp up my damage by a factor of 10, and I have a bunch of people who are with that. No, that's an extreme example, of course. You have just bifurcated the old school RuneScape community. And how many times can that happen?
Yeah, you need a massive mass, like a big critical mass, to actually cause a big bifurcation, right? Like that's what we saw with RS3 and old school when that split. Like it was basically a split down the middle, or maybe even a slightly more on the old school side. And that's the kind of split you need to actually create like a sustainable bifurcation. But like if it's like one clan, like I know how activity cycles in clans go, right? Like at some point people are going to stop playing, and you need to start recruiting people. How are you going to recruit people if you play in a completely separate server? So I don't think that will work.
Yeah.
So you need a critical mass. And like also if you go to like one of these servers, if you don't have a critical mass, you have nothing like on the GE basically, because everybody playing on a server is basically playing Group Iron Man. Though of course you can actually copy characters over into one of these servers, is what they said. So how that works and how that's sort of being represented, I don't know and I don't understand. But what are we really trying to make here?
Yeah.
Some of the biggest thing I could think of is, like, I think the first instinct of everybody is like, why would you make a mirror of the game? You could do your own leagues, but what is that really interesting, right? All the time, all of these leagues game modes. But I do think if you think about community service in a way where they are basically activities enabled within the engine and the world of old school. So like one
Gary's
thing I could imagine. Yeah, in a way. So like one thing is like prop hunt. It's a big thing. Why not make a server where you can prop hunt? But like I think that's one of the examples they gave on the video. But the other example is like you could literally turn the world into like a clan wars battle. Like have each of the cities send like a fort that get the benefits of the city. Like you can have like a whole game mode that's basically a big world event.
Yeah.
Like imagine Armador versus Bandos that
we
had in which was like I think the most successful world event ever held. And it was really interesting because there was like PvP and like sort of holding different points
tower
across
defense.
the map. And like, exactly. And I think that could be set into old school. That is the kind of use case I think might be interesting.
Yeah, you're 100%. You're 100% right on that. And I think another thing that, we need to say, and I'm going to say two things on this, then you can see where you want to go after this. By and large, the Project Zanaris blog post was the shortest out of everything we saw here. But the pitch for it, done by content creators in the vein of Shark Tank, was one of the most elaborate. And I'm looking specifically at the server-wide purge mode. That made me smile. But as to why, that's of course a topic for another day. So we're very early days on this. There's going to be a live stream on the 12th in Discord on this, and the reason I mention that is because a lot of the stuff I think that people are worried about and talking about is going to emerge as details going forward. But the things that stood out to me that are potentially limiting in terms of whether or not this is going to be successful are the cost in terms of how much is it going to cost you to run your own server. We know there's going to be a cost associated with it already. And the second one is, what are people going to be able to do within that server? As in, if somebody's really going to want to, are they going to be able to create the Super Chad Ultra Zionist-based RS version if they wanted to do such a thing with that? And
I mean, one of the things is that they want to keep applying the game rules to it, which I can see a sense, because they will be hosting all of these servers. They'll still be responsible for it. So I don't think these servers are going to be a way to get around moderation or something like that.
Okay, so I think for a subsection of the population who'd be interested in these community servers, that kind of just takes that off the table then. Because I know there's a section of the population out there that would like that. Specifically amongst the old school gamers. So I think that's going to be one inhibiting factor for success.
Yeah.
And maybe the cost. But
yeah, I think the biggest, what's going to be interesting early on is, like they said, okay, you're going to be able to change some parameters, and like ultimately over time we want to add some actual content creation tools. My worry is that the first version of this is going to come out and you're going to maybe be able to change XP rates and some other things,
damage scaling,
enable infinite run, and then but can you ultimately actually make new quests, put new NPCs in,
and that was another
all of
thing.
The private server bullshit you see,
and that's exactly where I went with this. Is this also going to chip into the private server market? And my initial sense on that is no, those are still going to exist. But specifically,
I mean, but this is the same with bonds, right? If you compare it with bonds, it was like, real world trading is going to happen no matter what you do. Let's just take a cut of that. And this might be like part of the pitch might have been private servers are always going to be a thing. Let's take a cut out of that.
Yeah, that's fair. And they say, well, one of the things in the FAQ, will players be able to create their own quests, bosses, and items and what have you? The goal is to eventually enable people to develop their own creations and share those with the wider community. Yeah, exactly.
And my question is, once this launches, will this survive long enough for those features to arrive?
Yeah, or is it going to just be something that they? Well, we'll see. That's interesting because it has its own team attached to it, right? And that was the other thing I think that really rubbed people the wrong way, is that they're like, well, you hired another team for this, but you didn't hire another content, team to
exactly.
work when sailing was happening. You didn't hire more customer support.
Exactly. That's the whole, I think that is a bullshit statement, and I will call Jagex out of that.
Yeah, why say that?
It's not taking away resources from other updates. No, that is objectively false. There were apparently resources. Those resources were and I know, right? That money that came from the executives was earmarked to be used specifically on experimenting with this. If they had said, we want to have a whole new team and make new content updates, they might not have gotten the money in the first place. That's how business works, right?
Yeah.
You go to the executives, you come with a pitch, and they give you money to make a new team specifically to execute that pitch.
And if it's more of the same,
could they have pitched other things that might have been? Yeah.
And if it's more of the same, you're less likely to get it. Let's just say that. In most cases.
Exactly. So fair enough, right? In that situation, but it's still, I find it misleading.
Yeah. And I think this is just so interesting to look at this, because if I look at this entire summit roadmap, Project Zanaris is down here in the bottom right, but I feel like everything else that was mentioned here, it's a relatively smaller offering. It feels like, at least. But I think on scope, in terms of number, it's the same as the winter one was. But it feels smaller, I think.
Yeah, I did the math. You can basically map the two one-on-one. The only thing we're missing is a Grandmaster quest, and that got replaced by a game jam. Which, that's a pretty big deal. But if you then also consider that in both October and December we get holiday events, I think it's not actually
which
that
are new
overall.
This year, they said.
Yeah. So I think it's not too bad. And at the same time, right, like I think it's also really important, like these servers, they knew they were going to be controversial, right? Otherwise you don't say it doesn't take away resources from old school. Like if you put that in your communication proactively, you know that the community is not going to like this, right? Maybe they underestimated the number of people that disliked it based on the survey responses, but who knows. The first thought I had is that, like, based on this, is like, this is the price we pay to not have microtransactions in old school.
I need a rim shot sound for that.
Like, because
you're not wrong.
If you think about it, like, sure, old school is cheaper to maintain and has a larger number of members, so like economies of scale apply, but still per player you want to maximize. This is I love the name of the metric for this. It's ARPPU. ARPPU, which is average revenue per paying user. So you have average revenue per user, but average revenue per paying user is another metric that businesses like to optimize for.
Okay.
Which basically means once you get them to pay, you want them to pay as much as possible. And if you only have a single subscription offering, that's not really a good way of doing it, except for increasing your subscription prices, which they did. Which people don't like, so you get a bunch of
you get a bunch of other people to pay from a different angle.
Yeah. Then. So you get a bunch of churn out of that. So it's not necessarily the most sustainable thing to do all the time. So having another way,
it's another way to money. So this is just another way to monetize old school RuneScape that the content creator team will pay for.
And the nice thing about this, right, is that it has a very low probability of impacting the actual main game. Like the biggest worry I have is that now there's leagues all the time, all over the place, people no longer have the appetite to play the official leagues. But even then, I think the number of people who are willing to step outside of the official server and play unofficial game modes is probably going to be around the realm of 10% of all players.
Yeah, it's going to be small. I agree with that.
So ultimately, if I had to summarize my opinion on this, like I'm a bit worried because we already have sailing, which a few weeks ago we talked about on the show, and we said this is a huge investment, and it's just not clear what the payoff on this is. This is the same. This is another huge investment, right? A whole new team is being spun up, and I don't think that their road to success is obvious or necessarily there. Like, to me, this is a bet.
Yeah.
And I am not sure how many more bets old school can take. But it also tells something about the state of the game.
Just expand that out to the RuneScape franchise in general and Jagex.
Yes, and if you expand this out, it shows that, like, in a sense, old school has been doing really well lately, but it's also stagnant. It's not really growing anymore, right?
Yes,
if you look at player numbers, it's not growing. And you
that's
can
the
see
sense
all across Jagex that they're trying to course correct.
To figure out what's next. Got it. Yes.
Yes.
And the sense I get from talking with old school people is that the big glory days of the game were when they were adding things like Tombs of Amiskid and all the other raids into the game. And that was one of the things I think people were expecting in this summit, was to see another raid on the list, but that's not there. And instead we're talking about Project Zanaris, of course, amongst other things.
I mean, yes, but also I think Varla-MORE is on the same scale. I don't think, and I think we've talked about this before, I think people underestimate how big of a deal Varla-MORE is.
Oh, like, yeah, it's new area.
I know Corrin sort of came in, but like that took so much to mature and become like the area that it has become today. All of the first piece of Varlamore has shown that it needed very little polish and it's just ready to go.
Yeah, and that's the key with it. That's the key.
And we're talking about multiple new training methods, multiple PVM encounters, multiple quests. We are getting almost half a year, maybe a little bit much, but definitely like a quarter worth of content updates in one big hit.
Exactly.
That is huge, right?
And we're seeing this the Rising Darkness come on the 25th of September, which I think is maybe closer than we were anticipating it was going to be.
I was under the impression that they were going to announce a date that was going to be fairly soon. It's cool because they haven't really shown anything yet, so they did a pretty good job at sort of keeping it under wraps up to this point.
Yeah, I'm most looking forward to the quests, I do have to say.
Same here. I also do like that they said that it's going to be a little bit more gritty than the original part, which I think is great.
We saw that coming down the surface when we talked about that first quest, didn't we?
Exactly. I just love the idea of, this society that looks so good in so many ways that being like sort of darker undertones. So absolutely love it. The quests, great. They have another murder mystery, and we've seen sort of the progression.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Like Mistalin Murder was a pretty good quest, and the fact that they're sort of slowly getting better at them, very curious to see how that's going to go.
Yeah, we're going to have so many great quest weeks for this. I don't know how you listeners feel about quest weeks. Let us know in the comments on that, because that's honestly what we live for, is doing these new quest weeks with that. But I think another thing that's going to be really great when this arrives is to finally get some iteration on the herb lore skill, the potion storage stuff that they mentioned and all that other fun stuff on the side associated with that, because let's be honest, I feel like that's something that's been needed for a long time in old school, a new herb lore skill training method associated with this.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's
that's
going to be
probably
very
where
curious. Yeah, same. I definitely want to unlock the potion storage. I saw that, I'm like, yes, I need this. Like, the potions are like the bane of my life and my bank. I'm looking forward to getting that unlocked, and I will probably spend some time there. I'm not sure if I will go there right away because her prices and all that. I will probably just
and lower
do
XP per hour than regular.
Do a lot of farming and try and make some money first. But yeah.
Well, to do the to farm the new herb, you're going to need to do the new boss.
Yeah, but like farm the existing herbs, because people are going to probably do this activity to unlock like the potion storage and all that. So I think herb prices are
I thought you were just talking about the new one.
Yeah.
Alchemist amulet, good. I like that.
Yeah.
So
the secondaries bag, the storage, some really good rewards in there that I enjoy.
Yeah.
I should really unlock the herb sack from the Thai farm.
Yeah, I need to go there. I did that on Leagues, and I never went back on the main world because I never really felt the need to do it. But Colossal Worm Agility also, that's going to be interesting, I think. Yeah. I feel like this is probably outside of our agility band for it, but it'll be interesting to give a try nonetheless.
The level bands actually worry me a little bit, right? Like, it's the basic course is at 50 agility, and the advanced one is at 62. But why there, right? Like, I feel that's such a weird level band. Like the 62 one specifically, that sits right on top of the Sears Village one, which I think is super competitive in terms of both XP and Graceful tokens. And then I feel people skip the Falador one a lot because everything says you should skip it and stick with Canifis. Because that's where you get the most tokens. I didn't, because you get the tokens XP eventually anyway. You want the XP. So why would you go like to a different place? I don't know. Like, the low intensity is what is meant to make it popular. The question is this going to sit in this awkward spot where I think the Giants Foundry sit, where it's sort of AFK, but you still have to pay attention. So now you kind of get the worst of both worlds, I feel, at that point.
Yeah, and I also feel like agility is just the redheaded stepchild, as they say, because for the longest time, and still the case until the Ren energy changes come in, one of the first quality of life things you definitely should do upon starting old school is get graceful. And I feel like having something like this that's a little bit lower intensity to kind of shake things up a bit is probably a good thing in the grand scheme of things for people who are just coming into the game. Dare I say it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And
I love the reward though. I love the graceful outfit override. If I didn't already have an override I have worked hard for on my main, I would get it there, but I will probably get it on my Iron Man just to have like a different one there.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, hey, we're 2 weeks away from this, so we're gonna have lots of time to talk about this when it arrives. Do you want to?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and brief comments on the boss, Huey Codal, is what we're saying. I think on this.
Little Huey.
Mid-level.
I will probably figure it out. It's a group boss, so it less interesting to me. The mechanics, I don't know. It doesn't really resonate with me.
No.
I do love the upgrade to Blessed Dragonhide. I hope that's going to be reasonably affordable, because I'd love to get an upgrade to my Blessed Dragonhide, because Armadillo is not going to be it. And the next thing is Masori. That's also not happening for some time. So this sounds like a nice little upgrade in the middle, but I don't know if I'll be interested in grinding this out.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it lands. And, hey,
I am also still of the opinion it is not a dragon.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be fun to actually stand up next to it and see it and make the final determination on that. Ay. All right. We also have a third batch of Varla-MORE coming in the spring 2025, which I assume is going to be right immediately after RuneFest. Varla-MORE: The Final Dawn, and the way Mod Ed put this is that this will be the last expansion to Varla-MORE, but that doesn't mean they won't continue to be adding new things to it. And, obviously at this point in time, they're in a polling stage where they're going to be polling things like new PVM bosses, the new Slayer dungeon, and I think most interestingly to me, again, outside of the quests in this final Varla-MORE expansion, is a fletching activity.
Yeah, I think so. I like it. I love that it works with recycled bows, because we all know that what happens with bows is they get alked, right? Or sold to shops. That's like the main money-making method on Iron Man as well. So it's potentially going to be interesting, but also when they talk about delivering it to people across Varla-MORE, I'm like, please don't let this just be an iteration of the Gnome Restaurant.
Oh my god, that's triggering. That's triggering. I can guarantee you if that's the case, I will check out of that on day one.
Yeah, exactly.
But unlike you, you suffer through content. Whereas
I would suffer through it.
If it's content that I don't like, I'm just having no part in it.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. Like we talked about Herblore and that needing to get needing a training. I think fletching almost needed the training method more than Herblore.
Yeah.
For some reason, Herblore, yes, it's like very monotone. You do the same thing all the time, but it always felt sort of varied enough because you have different potions and different things. Fletching is just bows
or bolts.
So I like that. That's the skill that they're picking up and doing something with. Hey, we get to see who does it better. RS3 with their 110 fletching.
You're right. That's going to be... Well, I guess the RS3 one, that's coming in November. Late November. Yeah. So we'll have a chance to compare on this here to see where that lands with that and which one feels better at the end of the day. But, speaking of things feeling better, the thing that I most enjoyed out of this segment, and, obviously content is a great thing, but when they were showing off the video of this, oh my God, this is leaning into the old school look and feel so much, and I can't wait to see what this looks like on the HD client, just in terms of how all the new biomes work. And
even like the Summer Isle pictures for Batch 2 already look gorgeous. I'm like, you're making like autumn colored forest, my favorite season, right? Like red maples. I'm gonna love being in that part of the world. And then the rainforest and the mountain pass are such interesting biomes that I think haven't been done particularly well yet in old school. Like, sure, we have Karamja, but let's be honest, that's dated.
Oh yeah.
Like there's been a meme for the longest time in RS3 about how dated that was, and that's finally been fixed. But like, I love to see rainforest jungle get the proper old school treatment. And just in general, what I really love about Varla-MORE is like, this is the variety of biomes I want, right? Like, so much of the main overworld is like temperate, boring climate. And I know we're probably not going to get graphical overhauls in old school, though I would welcome them. But these new regions look absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, just makes me want the HD client even that much more.
Yeah.
But
there is one biome missing, which I'm really sad about, which is the isle, the city of bards, like the floating city.
right,
That's the part I was almost looking.
of course
forward
you'd want a
to
city of
most.
bards.
Yeah, but like sort of the pitch of that with like the academy and a whole bunch of things, I would have loved that. Sort of also like a commerce hub. I think it was like a little bit like Phoenicia, I think.
Yeah.
Or Venice. I should use the English term.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we looked at that. I think when the the early design docs of Varla-MORE were tabled.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. So I'm a little bit sad, but I guess they say that the mainland of Varla-MORE is completed. Doubt there's an island that we're adding this in batch 2, but hey,
yeah.
I will hope that we still get the City of Bards in the future.
And speaking of being completed with that comes a master tier quest that ties together the Varla-MORE story, putting us in set to take on a combined story of Varla-MORE plus Kingdom Divided in probably Grandmaster.
Yeah, it's going to be Master, which is the same as a Kingdom Divided, and my quest sense immediately
we foreshadowed
went
that in our Kingdom Divided episode.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really hoping that they merge the storylines and bring us like an amazing Grandmaster.
Because that one left off saying that there was, definitely something happening, and it was those crazy people from Varla-MORE, which they didn't name at the time, but now, reading between the lines, you know what it was. So
yeah, exactly.
That's going to be good.
And then the last thing they teased is like a bunch of combat stuff, like Slayer and the Doom of the
Enrage boss.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised. Like, it's a low intensity boss, but also enrages.
I want to know how the old school people are going to take this, because this is their first enrage boss.
Well, I think enrage mechanics are fine. I actually like them because it actually reduces things that come into the economy when people are learning, because they're pushing enrage, they're dying, and that's leaving a lot of loot on the table, which I think actually helps in reducing the amount of devaluation of the loot. So all of this,
if it's done right.
My worry is about combining the words low intensity and enrage. Like, how can something be like a boss be low intensity? Like, what are we talking about?
On RS3. And see, that's the thing. Even maybe that wasn't done right, because that trivialized summoning training. Because you just camp 0% zero mechanic Archglacier, and it prints blue charms for summoning. So you have to make sure that whatever this boss doesn't do anything like that.
Yeah. We will see. This is all very early days. I think it doesn't sound like... it sounds like there's a similar mix, like some PVM, some skilling, some quests.
Yeah.
And I think they got the balance right.
What about the low-intensity crab?
That's interesting. I think they have identified like an actual bottleneck in the game, which is the Ammonite crabs. Like, it makes no sense that they are as competitive as they are, right? Like, what's fun about that? Right? Like, what's really challenging?
The only way I got through that was by watching stuff while doing it, and I'm doing the same thing now with Nightmare Zone.
Yes, but it's at the same time, I don't think that is necessarily. It's also the competitiveness. Right? I don't even necessarily want the XP rates of this to be better, but if it takes away the competitiveness and makes it more convenient, I'll sign for it.
Yeah. Okay. And these are in the poll right now, by the way. You can go vote on these.
Yeah, you should.
I voted it in terms of this Varla-MORE part here. I voted yes for everything except the Slayer dungeon. I'm allowed to be personal with that.
The Slayer dungeon. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't mind adding Slayer dungeons and new Slayer monsters. They can knock themselves out.
All right. Next. I mentioned it. HD client mode, new client updates, and of course the new mobile UI. The new mobile UI is coming on October 9th,
so
which is quick.
I don't think HD mode is coming.
No, HD mode is not coming immediately, but the new client updates are coming on the 9th.
Yeah, so we're getting the new core mobile UI.
Yeah.
Which I welcome a lot. I was so happy playing that. But I think are we getting also we're getting the tile markers.
It's the tile
NPC
markers,
highlights,
menu,
high
NPC
scores,
highlighting,
and menu
swapping.
swapper. Oh my goodness, I'm looking forward to optimizing my mobile herb runs so much with menu entry swapper. Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
Like, honestly, I feel like that's probably all you need to say in relation to that. And I think that when you announce that is on the way sooner rather than later, that tells us that the beta that they had for that back in June, I think, probably hit the right notes on that. So we will look forward to playing that when that arrives in about a month or so. But just regular updates otherwise on HD mode. I really like the way things are looking here. It's doing high def for old school in a way that I think preserves the old school look and feel. And I think the thing that I'm most pleased about with this is that it's going to be offering its own unique take on this as we see more of it that is different than what we see with 117 and HDOS, which is important.
I feel that they managed, like, what you see a lot, I think, with 117 is that they updated the textures to be very, like, realistic materials. And what I really like about these screenshots is I think they managed to straddle the line between that cartoony look that is so fundamental to RuneScape with making it look not necessarily like it has a little bit of a mobile game vibe, but it's not something you would place like 2 decades old ago.
And
right?
and the biggest thing is the lighting.
Yeah, exactly. Like the lighting, the bloom, like the subtle touches here and there. Like I think it really just covers, like it makes all of the great models, especially the ones we've been talking about, right? Like the new modern style of new areas makes them really come to life.
Yeah, I can't wait to play it. I can't wait to play with it.
I'm still hoping for the plugins, of course, that I want to all come across.
Yeah, yes. Which ones are you hoping that are going to come across with this? Because they mentioned, specifically talking to very popular plugin authors and making sure they'll work on day one. They specifically highlight Tombs of Amosket Helper, Door Kicker, and Quest Helper among some things in their screenshots.
Yeah, Quest Helper, I'm ashamed to admit, but I do use it on my Iron Man because I do the quests on my main already, so I just want to get through them fairly fast. So that one is definitely a big one. That's a good question. I think there's a few ones, like for example, like a few built-in ones, like showing the icons of where things are on the minimap in my house. That's not a standard feature.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Because I went into your... Or maybe it is a plugin that's enabled by default.
It's a default enabled plugin in RuneLite, and I think there's a lot of ones like them. This is the thing with plugins. There's so many that
you
I
don't
have
know what's running.
That exactly, like I've gotten so used to it. And like maybe once we get closer to it, we should do an episode where we just talk about these plugins that we. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
I don't have it prepared.
Right, and the reason we haven't done that is because, is that a podcast topic or is that a YouTube video, right? I don't know.
I think there's too many YouTube videos with the RuneLite plugins you can't miss, so I think we should do it a podcast to be different than the rest of people.
Yeah, fair enough. And, as I mentioned, I think one of the biggest things with this in terms of HD and plugins and the new client and all that, one of the biggest things that the old school team can do to grow, evolve, and advance the game is to do technical updates like this. So there was a survey about the Summer Summit, and it mentioned, what is the most important thing to you and everything that was announced. I put this at the very top end for me because I think it's just that important to, keep modernizing our technology and whatnot that we play the game with. So
That's fair, yeah.
I really like the way the water looks too, I must say. We didn't mention that.
I think the technical stuff is going to be helpful for acquisition, not necessarily retention. I think the people who already play old school, and even they will like it, but it's not like it will not be make or break. But for giving the game a new reputation of not being this at this point almost well, the game itself is like 25 years old, right? But like old school, all the graphics, it has a reputation of being a bit jank, and taking that away by making it look pretty, I can see that opening up new audiences.
Yeah, fair enough. Good. We also have something called Curse of Arrav coming winter 2024, which I read is December of this year. Interestingly enough, they say that, so probably the last update of the year, if I had to guess, in relation to that. And I think the interesting bit about what we're looking at here on this is they say it's a port with an old school twist. We don't know what that means.
I just don't know what that means anymore, because I feel they've been starting to use that word to talk about a variety of quests. And I'm like, I think they use the same terminology to talk about how graphic sleeps, and we're like, it's like management wants you to show the story. Management wants you to find the difference between these two pictures, and like they're the same picture, right? Like, sure, there's differences, but like, whereas in some cases, I feel the changes were larger, right? Like the quality of life features in the Path of Glory were way bigger.
Yeah.
So like, what are we talking about with an old school twist? Like, how much? I feel we're getting the exact same quest with maybe a few cleanups here and there to make sure that the story matches.
So the twist is basically a marketing term then.
Yeah, I think
they also mentioned tying in with Missing My Mummy, which I think is interesting in relation to where this is all going to land.
Yeah. And
this is all, of course, putting us on the path to a confrontation probably in 2025 with the Majorat after Well Gothic Sleeps and everything, ties together. And we mentioned at the end of Well Gothic Sleeps that there are probably still a few quests to go in there. Obviously, they need to expand access to Zemregel's Fortress, and they're going to be dropping the zombie helmet here, which is a melee helmet that indexes slightly towards Crush over the other styles, with this 50 strength, 50 defense. So I don't know. I think that's a fair drop, and we'll see where it all lands when it arrives.
Yeah.
Wrathmaw, the other elephant in the room.
Is it though? Like, this one, I find it so weird that it has become. I mean, I can understand it, but I find it weird that this has become such an elephant in the room.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the fact it's a wilderness boss, and people, given the way the PvP community has their reputation in old school, I think that initially puts a negative spin on it. I also think something that was mentioned in the initial run through this was the amount of teeth that you're going to need to make something from it. And then that, of course, ties into, well, you can only do this a certain number of times a week, and you need to log in at a certain time to do it. So it's kind of the same vein of a daily or a wilderness flash event in RS3, which I don't necessarily know that the old school community is going to respond favorably to.
So here's my take, right? I think that it's a fair decision on Jagex's part that they want things like PvP clans to continue being a thing in old school. And that's fair. I think there's an audience for that, and we need to cater to them. In that sense, you want to start encouraging big PvP clan on PvP clan encounters, right? You want to cause and encourage action. And by having a function like this, like the Wrathmaw, that forces those people to be in the same place, you are forcing conflict, right? Like, this is very, if you are familiar with the Hunger Games series, where they, like at some point, when all of the participants are too far apart, they will force them together because they want to force action. And this is, I think, the same. This is why there is limited worlds. This is why, because if there were like multiple worlds, the PvP clans would be like just claim a world for themselves and that's it, right? Like, and now you have taken all of but by making it a limited resource, by making it a completely fixed supply of rewards, you can bet that the PvP clans will be fighting over this every single time. And that is why I think this piece of content, even though it's FOMO content, as people say, that's the only real way you can force these PvP clans in a head-to-head encounter, which is what you want.
And you keep them playing with that, and you keep them bringing the money in with new accounts and different types of peers and alts and all that.
Exactly. And I could imagine that if I were into a PvP clan and it's like, hey, in 15 minutes, mission Wrathmaw is going to start and we're all going to gear up and we're all going to go there together and make sure that we beat like clan B to it, I could see that being fun, right?
Yeah.
I've played like large scale PvP, like world versus world versus world in Guild Wars 2, and it's a lot of fun because there's an objective and you're doing it together.
Okay, I can see that. Now I see why you're voting yes on this. I voted no on this one. Even though, and maybe this is again being selfish, but I voted no. And the other thing that I think we need to highlight with this is that there's no reason and there's no need for mains who don't PvP to feel a need to complete this content. They said they were very upfront about that.
Yeah, and that's the same thing, right? Like this is gonna come down to execution. I feel the fact that these rewards are going to be very limited and keeping the value high, you can't really make the rewards best in slot either, because if you do, you're gonna create like a really weird economical situation. Where it's just going to be the richest people getting access to this, which I think is what you want to prevent.
Yeah, because that creates a power disparity in PvP as well.
Exactly. So I think that like execution on the reward space needs to be done really, really well. But all in all, I think the entire concept of this, maybe it needs tweaking, but I get it. I like it. I think it's not for me, right? And a lot of people are like, I as an individual can never complete this because the PvP clans are going to be fighting. This is content for PvP clans.
Yeah.
Like, not every single update of a roadmap needs to apply to you. That's a thing I need to keep repeating, right? Like, if you're in a PvP clan, you don't really care that much about the new skilling activity in Varla-MORE. Like, imagine being in a PvP clan and only one in every 6 months.
Oh, I know. I've been there before. Not this game, but other games. Yes, I know.
So let's be honest. Like, let's give them this. So I'm going to be voting yes on this. I have some concerns, sure, but I think they can be banged out like between now and November.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, fair enough. Also in November, end of November, Leagues 5, Raging Echoes. I don't think we anticipated this being so soon after last one, did we?
No, they never really gave the results of the survey.
No,
I personally would have liked a lower cadence. I still feel, I don't want to say burnt out, but I still feel like I haven't quite recovered from previous leagues. And I think like two years sounds like a lot, so I voted for 18 months in that survey, and I think that would be a good cadence because it also swaps between summer and winter that way.
And this one's only 6 weeks long compared to about the 10 the last one was.
Oh, I missed that. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Am I gonna have to get the same points for the point totals?
I don't know.
Oh, I hope not. I hope that the tasks will be quicker to get my trophies.
One thing that they are decoupling, and I'll let you go on that after this, but I just want to say also is they're decoupling combat boosts from the relic system.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think that's such a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally, timing-wise, I think it's gonna work out pretty well. I'm in a few grinds right now, but I got all of the quest levels, so there's not like nothing too urgent. So by the time it comes around to November, I'll probably sort of be a bit tired of the different grinds, and then being able to switch into this and doing something completely different might be a nice way to change things up. I'm also getting to the point where I want to start experimenting with some of the PVM in old school. This is going to be a nice playground for that. So
That's
I'm actually
That's a good point.
I'm actually probably going to be trying. I don't know. I kind of want to try Tombs of Amescott before, but like maybe this will be an opportunity to do like Chambers of Xeric or some of the other combat encounters that are like tiny bit too intimidating on my main.
Yeah, I'm still undecided if I'm going to do this one. But you mentioned, the raids and whatnot. We don't necessarily know where specific items are going to drop, and they mentioned that what they want to do with this is shake up the regions that people choose, so that people are not necessarily, always choosing desert. And I think the thing that I read this, and you correct me if I'm wrong on it, is that you're going to effectively be able to get all the raid drops from any of the raids out there, and then you're going to have different
I think that's interesting.
Regions.
It feels very artificial though, and like even then, I don't think it's gonna fix the situation. Because if you think about it, content like Giant's Foundry and Guardians of the Rift, which you both unlock in the desert, and Temporos, right? These are free training methods that are huge to get access to.
Yeah.
And Pyramid Plunder.
Right.
As well. So like you can see how that region is just stacks really high. And my worry is like even if you try and balance it out, I think over time, especially because it keeps being the same, a meta is going to start appearing and people are just going to like cruise control, choose the same regions every single time because that's the meta. They're going to be the meta slave that you said you wanted to be. Right?
Yeah, that's
every single time.
That's what I wish.
And how do you like? And I think it's fine if there's a meta, but you need to shake the meta up for each league so it remains dynamic and different. And how are you going to do that without moving the boundaries of region?
And I don't know if that's done by telling people, "Hey, choose the regions that have what you want to play in it." No, you're right. People are still going to choose what has the best training methods for the skills that they get. And they apparently will be fixing one thing out the gate here, in that people won't need to, choose the Trickster equivalent or something like that, because everybody's going to have infinite run energy.
That was the same last time.
Oh,
Trickster
it was?
Did not give you it.
I thought that came from Trickster. Okay, never mind then.
No. That will just remain a constant thing. Yeah, that's sort of my worry. I liked the mechanic of choosing regions, but I would have liked them to demarcate it differently, right? So we'll see where it goes, I guess. I also read some anecdotes of almost everybody went with Kandarin in the first Trailblazer. And in the second Trailblazer, like a lot fewer people did it, even though it was still a really good region. It's just, and like a lot of people said, like I didn't choose Kandarin, but it kind of felt bad because it's stacked with content.
Right.
So we'll see how it goes as well. I also think Varla-MORE, it's almost a little bit too early to add Varla-MORE, I feel. Because we're only going to have parts 2, like 1 and 2. I think if part 3 was in there,
the big draw for Varla-MORE is going to be the Colosseum.
Oh, that's true. That is true. You do have the Colosseum. Of course, you get amazing gear drops from Moons of Peril as well. Probably comparable, if not better than Barrows. So, yeah, I guess Varla-MORE has still more to. Varla-MORE still has more going for it than the Wilderness.
Oh, thank God on that.
Poor Wilderness. But we'll see. I remain skeptical on this one. I would have liked them to change things up a little bit more, and now it feels like, we're just going to iterate the same formula over and over again. and we're gonna do it every year. This sounds like a recipe for people burning out.
You're right. It would have been better to have 18 months than you go winter, summer, winter, summer.
Exactly, because then it would not have mattered as much. It's the same, but I kind of would
I
have
also
liked to
found
see.
it really difficult playing over Christmas.
Well, yeah, and now it's gonna wrap up over Christmas, which is gonna feel even worse, right? Yeah, it's gonna probably wrap up exactly before I go on vacation. So
Yay!
works out for me. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
And
I AFK'd a lot over Christmas, and I am now gonna have to make my family go through that a second time.
right on. And coming off of leagues in 2025 to start off 2025, we have Game Jam 5 updates, which are going to include changes to the collection log and its interfaces, the collection ranking system, interestingly enough, and a high score aspect of it. I don't know how I feel about that.
I have no problems with it.
Okay.
Go for it. If you want to go green log everything, by all means, knock yourself out.
All right, fair enough. Also talking about Iron Man specific concessions there, so I think that's important. I just don't know if having high scores for collection logs is good because it just creates an aspect of completionism that you can broadcast.
Maybe, but is it the same? Can't you say the same for 200 mil XP?
I guess. Fair enough.
And how many people are actually high score chasing? I think high scores are a lot less problematic than in-game rewards, and there are in-game rewards actually, aesthetic rewards for C-log completion, but I don't think people are going to be chasing after it. They're not that.
Yeah, and the happiest thing I think that comes from all this is the UI changes with completion or with the collection logs, but also the mini map or the mini menu entries and that which we saw prototyped in that game jam, and it's just nice to see something
I think we covered we covered most of these as part of the game jam post. The surprise to me was that the locking inventory slots for deposit also worked with the normal bank interface.
Mm-hmm.
And like the number of times I've been doing like fletching or like some other thing that requires me to have things in my inventory, and I accidentally, I hate it. And I'm like, this is like such a good quality of life
one step
update.
away from presets.
We're getting slowly to the point where I don't know if I still need my bank presets. I would still like them, but I don't need them anymore.
You're getting your POH customization.
Yes. I hope the unlocks are gonna be like not annoying grinds, but I still have plenty of levels to go for 99 construction, and I can't wait. I'm gonna have to make some tough choices because I am interested in both the Prif and the Varla-MORE theme.
Just wait and watch. Watch the Prif one come from the Gauntlet or something.
We'll see. I doubt it. I think it's gonna be just like Obsidian's one. Maybe gonna cost points from Mahogany contracts, Mahogany homes.
Yeah, that would be smart. That'd be smart. Another thing we have in the spring is giant bosses. We don't have much information on this one right now because it's kind of far out. I mean, as far as I can tell, it's just an iteration of the other kind of giant bosses that we have already in game, so not too much to write home about there, I don't think.
No, I think the biggest discussion about this is going to be the key system, right? Like, so right now you need to gather keys for Obor and Briar Fighter, which, like, I'm currently chasing combat achievements, so this is like a pain. Like, how am I gonna, get to Obor without just camping hill giants for ages? So that's an interesting discussion to me. What I'm wondering though is, like, at this point, why are they different than normal Slayer bosses, and should they just be implemented as Slayer bosses? I think that would be an interesting discussion, because all of the giants are Slayer creatures, so why aren't they
Slayer bosses?
Yeah, exactly. So I'd love to hear, maybe somebody in the comment section has more context on this than we do, but that they feel like a little bit odd, and by taking away the keys, I'm almost feeling like at that point they're still odd, but they're so close to things that are not odd that I wonder if we should just make them cross that line.
Yeah, let us know if there's any weird catch cases for that. But Well, that pretty much brings us to the end here. Overall thoughts, opinions, ruminations?
I don't know. I came into this actually not expecting much, and
Same.
my first response was, yeah, it's a little bit light, but it's not as light as
It's not as light as it could have been, given the fact, sailing and big Varla-MORE expansions.
And like the Winter Summit as well. Like if you compare it to the Winter Summit, it's almost like exactly the same. And if you look at the last 6 months of content, they've been on the light side, but I don't think we have anything to complain about. So as long as we see these updates sort of completed with some things that we don't know about, like Araxor was a bit of a surprise, of course, and those polls with quality of life updates, I think we're looking at I would say my favorite 6 months coming up, but like Varlamore will continue to be huge. I think we're going to get some great stuff out of that. That's going to keep us busy for a while.
This period is carried by Leagues and Varla-MORE.
Yeah, a little bit. I will see how excited I get about Leagues when it's coming up. I think Project Zanaris, it's a choice that they included that announcement in the Summer Summit. I think it's taking away a lot of the discussion of what should be. And of course, sailing is also hanging over all of this with, it's affecting all of this.
And that's the thing. You can't say that the 3 tiles at the bottom are not affecting the game. They are. Sailing, HD, and Project Zanaris. Yeah.
So we'll see. I remain cautiously optimistic about this going forward. I think looking at it and just looking from a personal perspective, I still have my own goals to chase, and there's going to be enough things in there to mix things up and give me new things to go for. So I don't think I can complain.
Right, and that's a sentiment I agree with as well, because I'm certainly not done my level training either in this regard, but I don't feel necessarily compelled to run out and, upend what's left of that level training to complete anything, that's immediately on the roadmap, because, in theory, should have all the levels that are needed for everything to that regard. I feel like the big question out there is going to be, what is the reaction that this version of Leagues is going to get when we look, 2.5 weeks in at the player numbers chart? Because, Leagues 4 and the one before that, there was always a huge uptick on the number of people playing, and that's something that always brings people back in. And then with that, can you maybe sell some people on Varla-MORE if they choose that region? And from there, it's just a matter of holding everybody over until we get to RuneFest. And I feel like opening, that up beyond that is where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah, I think the player numbers on the next leagues are going to say a lot about the coming direction of it.
Yeah. And, I definitely feel like it was, the right move to mention Project Zanaris at the top of the show, because I know a lot of people are probably going to be thinking one way or another about that. And I hope that we have struck the right balance on that. And let us know what you guys think, of course. Always interested to hear about that, especially RuneScape, any version of RuneScape's first foray into community servers. But that's pretty much all I got for this summit. Anything else you'd like to say before we depart?
Nope.
No? Sounds good then? Alrighty, folks. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. If you want to subscribe, head on over to update.show/OS. Click on your favorite podcast listening service out there. We're on all of them: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and more. That's the best way to get the show to ensure that you don't miss an episode. Of course, we're also on YouTube at youtube.com/@OSRS Update. Like and subscribe there. And hey, if you even want to get it as soon as that one arrives, press that bell notification. I know that's a cliche thing to say, but it works. With that being said, we'll see you guys next week for another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Bye.